Netflix just dropped Season 2 of Castlevania Nocturne, and I want to talk about its ending as well as its real-life lore. This is a reaction to the finale of the second season of Castlevania Nocturne, which itself is the second series in the Castlevania animated universe, which has a previous show of 4 seasons, with the animated series as a whole being a spin-off or adaptation of the video game. So there's going to be spoilers for every level of the franchise going forward. Castlevania is a franchise that focuses primarily on the idea of vampires and demons, as well as the Belmont family that hunts them down over many generations. The Nocturne series opened with the story of Richter Belmont in the 1700s, during the time of the French Revolution. Here, he and his small team are helping to fight vampires in the dark of night to keep the people of Europe safe. They are later joined by Annette, who has recently traveled from the Caribbean to help save Europe and the world from the upcoming attack of the supposed Vampire Messiah. They mention prophecies of this Vampire Messiah who is supposed to usher in an age of endless dark, where vampires rule over all the earth. This plan is already well underway, with much of the known world, even across the ocean, already being controlled by vampires as a whole. Vampires are parasites, being creatures that require the blood of others to survive. They of course prefer the blood of other humans, with the nearest substitute in the show, pigs, being something that vampires do not like. In order to conquer the world, they do so in a very parasitic way, by aligning themselves with those in the other species, the humans, who are already being parasitic themselves. We see this in different ways in Europe and the Americas. In Europe, the vampires latched onto the humans that were already in a position of power over the masses, the nobles and royals who ruled over their own people. The vampires allowed them to remain in control, turning some of them into vampires themselves as a gift of immortality. But the masses of lower classes get to be moved in a way that suits the vampires' ultimate goals to rule the entire planet. In the Americas, the vampires had used the slave trade to rise to power and keep themselves a supply of humans they could eat without the worry of human law caring about their deaths. Here, Annette and others are on a plantation owned by a merciless vampire who uses them as livestock. The first season built up to the arrival of the supposed vampire messiah, Elizabeth Bathory, who comes to Europe to perform the ritual to cast the world into eternal night, turning her into a larger monstrous demon. The epic battle ends with Richter, Annette, and their squad being rescued by Alucard, a character who will likely be unknown to you if you haven't seen the original series or played the original games. Alucard is the son of Dracula, hence his name Alucard being just Dracula backwards. In the first Castlevania series, Alucard was explained to be the child of Dracula and a human woman that he had legitimately fallen in love with. The first 2 seasons focus mostly on Dracula wanting revenge for how the careless humans of the town had killed his wife after assuming she was an evil witch, instead of a well-meaning healer who came to Dracula seeking knowledge that could help humans. For burning his wife at the stake, Dracula decides to kill the people of the town and later the entire world, with the first 2 seasons ending with the defeat of Dracula. Alucard had loved his mother and his father, but when Dracula had decided to kill the humans, Alucard had to become a mythic figure known to help humans. And even after defeating Dracula, he would go on to have more stories in season 3 and 4. The original show took place about 3 centuries before the Nocturne spin-off series, with Alucard waiting in the shadows until he was desperately needed again in the season 1 finale. Season 2 opened with the reveal that before coming to the battle, Alucard was already trying to defeat the Vampire Messiah by tracking down the source of her power. The Vampire Messiah, Elizabeth Bathory, is based on a real-life figure from the 1500s, a Hungarian noblewoman who is accused of bathing in the blood of young women from the lower classes to try and maintain her youth. It's because of this that Bathory was called the Blood Countess, and it makes sense that in the Castlevania world, she would perhaps already have been a vampire at the time that these accusations occurred. While a lot of her accomplices were executed, her nobility allowed her to spend the last of her own life essentially under wealthy house arrest. She supposedly died of natural causes, but of course in the Castlevania world, this house arrest would just be a lie to cover her being an immortal vampire who would just go on to start a new life somewhere else and would continue preying on victims for their blood. In season 1, Elizabeth Bathory was said to drink the blood of Sekhmet, a real-life Egyptian goddess representing not just war, but bloodthirsty war in particular. The sun god Ra was said to make Sekhmet from his eye and sick her on humans for rebelling against him. Sekhmet is so thirsty for blood that the only way to stop her from warring against all the people is to trick her into drinking beer disguised as blood, leading to her intoxication. This bloodthirsty aspect is important because it makes Sekhmet the perfect mother god for vampires, though as season 2 would explore, she isn't inherently evil, and that becomes important to the bigger lore that Nocturne brings to Castlevania. The key to defeating Bathory becomes Annette, who is the most spiritually focused member of the team. Annette is said to be the descendant of the god Ogun, a god of iron and war, whose real-life worship spread from West Africa and into the Caribbean. Ogun is just one of many gods among the Yoruba pantheon, but in the show, he and Sekhmet are not portrayed as gods in the way we tend to think of today. Today, we mostly think of God in the monotheistic sense, as an all-powerful deity who creates the world and humans and maybe also guides them. The gods we meet in the show, however, are hinted at having more human origins. Ogun is the ancestor of Annette, as we said, and just the eldest in a large group of ancestor spirits that guide her in the show. Sekhmet, meanwhile, is an Egyptian god of war said to be born of the sun god Ra, but who has an earthly mummy left behind like Egyptian royalty. In general, Egyptian gods were seen as once being royals who died and went to heaven, or even a combination of the many different pharaohs who ascend to a higher spiritual realm to become one, merging with the first pharaoh of Egypt, the god of the underworld, Osiris. The worship of Osiris would have begun as simple ancestor worship, but as Egypt grew to be not just a tribe of people but an entire nation, Osiris would become known less as a king or even as an ancestor, but more so as a god that guides Egypt as a whole. Annette goes to meet Ogun in Season 2 when she needs help finding a way to defeat Bathory, and here Ogun seems to confirm that he had human origins. According to him, when the Orisha first came to Earth, it was covered too much in plants, and it was his machete that allowed them to clear the way, leading to him being praised as the god of iron. The Orisha are the Yoruba gods, of which Ogun is just one of many, but they are described as coming to the Earth almost like aliens, yet living there like primitive humans. In the original myths, Ogun cleared the way of shrubbery not for the Orisha or the other gods, but for the humans in particular, making it possible for them to exist in Africa. The show thus paints the other Orisha as early humans who had somehow made it to Earth, and in particular Africa, who would become the first ancestor spirits of the land that would later become its gods. With such primitive tools and ones being treated like new inventions, it makes sense that instead of traveling by some sort of advanced alien technology, they actually made it to the Earth through the magical portal system that we saw explored in the original Castlevania series. The idea of humans coming from other worlds is very popular with things like the ancient aliens theory, but there is also the idea that if humans did come to Earth from elsewhere, it was through these portals or stargates, something we'll get into more with my eventual Treasure Planet video. In real life, Ogun represents the real ancestors who first started using metal tools in Africa. Once these were invented, clearing the shrubbery was made easier for humans, and they could tame different lands and use it for their own purposes. The machete also had its use as a weapon of war, however, and because of that, Ogun is also seen as a god of war. Those who made great inventions and those who fought for their people's safety would be the people that early humans prayed to after their eventual deaths, and over time, these father spirits become grandfather spirits and great-grandfather spirits. Their history begins to merge with the history of similar patriarchs in the surrounding families and the patriarchs who all died protecting the greater tribe, eventually merging into one god like Ogun. This is the same process that would have happened to all of the real-life gods, starting out as patriarchs that eventually become these divine figures, and the same would be true of Sekhmet, the goddess. According to Ogun, these gods, as they are called, are corrupting themselves and being used by corrupt entities in the mortal realm, both humans and vampires. Sekhmet is just one example of this, being a goddess of war, and thus being abused for the power she can grant people to conquer others. But this power can be abused against the god's wishes. Sekhmet herself was not always evil, but in fact has an important place in the Egyptian pantheon when not being used to attack humans. This is similar to Ogun, who, as we said, is a god of war, but who is also just known as a god of clearing ways, something that can be done with shrubbery or with violent tribes attacking you. To only use him for war would be to use him the way Sekhmet had begun to be used over time, to hurt instead of perhaps to protect. Now in the show, the vampire messiah ends up eating the Ba and Ka of Sekhmet, her blood and heart from the original mummified body. There is a third force, however, that Ogun describes as always wanting the ultimate good, the Ak of Sekhmet, which Annette has to go into the Egyptian underworld to find. She goes there with the iron tools of Ogun, allowing her to magically clear the way, creating a path with her machete the same way he did in the wilderness when they first came to Earth. Here in the Egyptian afterlife of Duat, she finds Sekhmet, who has been thrown out of balance because of the way that her physical body has been used on Earth to do more evil. With her scales out of balance, she cannot properly go on in the afterlife, and instead has to take over the body of Annette to go back to Earth and fight this version of her that is causing mayhem. This brings us to the finale, where we have something of a battle of the messiahs. In Christianity, there is only one Messiah, and that is the Son of God, Jesus Christ. Messiah is Hebrew for anointed, which is Christ in Greek, with the story of Jesus being that he was sent to die for our sins on a cross before experiencing a resurrection that gave him greater spiritual enlightenment. In Nocturne, there are rumors of prophecy early on of a vampire messiah, which Bathory declares herself to be, but she is betrayed by the priestess of Sekhmet, who is following a different prophecy that Sekhmet would one day return. She believed herself to be the vessel that was meant to bring Sekhmet back, but instead, Sekhmet's return was actually prophesied to stop her, it would seem, to come to the earth and prevent someone else from using her Ba and Ka evilly. When Sekhmet takes over Annette, she herself is treated like a messiah for the humans in the story, sacrificing herself twice to go to the world of the dead, once to save Sekhmet and retrieve her from there, and the second time after dying to save everyone else, much like Jesus. Alucard, meanwhile, serves as a third vampire messiah, but a good one instead of a bad one, and that's something that hails back from the first animated series. In season 1, Alucard was found by the ancestors of Richter Belmont, who were searching the catacombs beneath the earth trying to find a supposed warrior that helps humans fight vampires. When revealed, Alucard is jokingly referred to as the Messiah and a floating Jesus, and Alucard is followed everywhere by his shining sword. In its neutral position, it often looks like he is followed by a cross, and with this sword being the tool used to fight his father Dracula, it is the cross that he bears, so to speak, the way Jesus had to carry his cross to his execution. It is with this cross, or sword, that he is seemingly defeated for a moment in the finale before giving the sword to Richter to use with his special powers, leading to the vampire messiah being defeated, Sekhmet being able to return to a peaceful afterlife, and Europe being free from the power of vampires, at least for now. But with this being a second series and an already rather large franchise, I bet there's going to be more coming, whether about these characters or others. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you like these sort of mythological deep dives, consider becoming a member of our channel, where you'll get early access to videos like this one, where we go deep on the mythology that inspires certain cartoons. If you haven't seen it yet, go check out the video we did on the Disney Atlantis movie, or on the Lara Croft Tomb Raider animated series, which we go to even greater lengths to break down than Castlevania. See you guys there.
Well, 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 if it isn't my arch rival, Racer Rabbit. Shady the Bat, you're here for the magic crystal as well?
Careful, Racer! He almost beat you last time.
I guess we'll have no choice but to battle till the very end, our hands all over each other. No homo. There is no homo that I fear. Well then, may the best homo win!
Wait, what did you say?